So funny, I just did that, and I was like, oh my God, my chest moved. I'm going to be thinking about how I'm breathing all day. Oh.
Welcome back to Yoga Express, your virtual stretch clinic that helps you move the body to still the mind. My name is Banu Suresh. I'm your host for this program. What we have for you today is going to be a fairly unique experience. In fact, we like to think Yoga Express always offers you a unique experience. But today's episode is a little extra special because we have someone to guide us through the very simple process and give us some adaptations and some explanations for some of the things we already do in yoga. Before I reintroduce you to our special guest once again, I would like to introduce you to a very familiar face, Sarah Torres. Sarah is an actress, model, and an up-and-coming author. Sarah, what do you have? What's your latest project? What are you up to?
I'm still working on my personal scripts.
Wonderful.
And I want to join this contest to be the spokesmodel for
By the time
Black
we air it, you would have
won already.
Won the
I would be
contest.
like, yeah,
yes.
I won. Yeah, right. So I think I should find out in May after I submit everything.
Okay.
So we're
we'll
supposed
air
to find
in April.
out in May. Oh.
No, that's wonderful. So what else are you up to?
I'm actually doing some extra work. I tend to forget about that sometimes, but it's just background stuff. You know, I sit in this room to make it look full, but they're gonna pay me $80 for the day, so.
Hey, it's money, and that helps. Every little bit helps.
And
Plus, it's a good experience,
It's
right?
only it's not an all day thing, so that's good. Because I remember one time I did extra work, and it was like from 12 to like 8, 9 o'clock at night, and they were only paying like $50.
Right.
And it's like, all right, I'm not doing anything but sitting here.
Well, that's true. And you got 3 little ones, all of them very close to you.
Yeah, oh, look, this is the newest one.
You did get it.
Yeah.
Noelle.
Mm-hmm. It's got a little color
Nice.
there.
I know you've been talking about getting her tattoo as well, so you
Yeah.
finally got it. You know, it's funny how love does strange things. She puts up with the pain of tattoos because they're all the names of her kids.
It's not
That's
that
great.
painful.
So you have Anais, Naomi, and
Yep.
Noelle.
And my mom's.
Wonderful. And your mother's in the
Yeah.
back of your neck.
She's attached to my butterfly.
Right. So that means
No
you have
matter
all
how
the people
far
you
I
love.
fly away, I'm always attached to them.
You're always attached to them. So you keep all the people that are close to you close to you.
Yeah.
Very good. So, Sarah, welcome back to the show. It's always a pleasure to have you
Love
back.
to be here.
We love
I
having
was
you
so
here.
upset I couldn't make it last week, but it really did throw me off. I
Well,
stretched
that's
at home.
Good.
But just
Good.
the whole group energy effect wasn't there, and
yes,
it's just
it's always nice
it's different.
for us to suffer together. Put it that way, right? Instead of doing it at the gym.
You guys are suffering.
No, we're all having fun. We're sharing our energy.
Yeah.
Before I move on to introduce our special guest once more, Josiane Hurd, holding the fort for us as usual. Thank you so much. Our director, Josiane, thanks so much for hanging in there, putting up with all our tricks and pranks. Thanks to Melanie Morgan for the gobos and the studio lights and the sounds. Cesar Dipara, thank you so much for the body music and opening track from Sapta Tandavam. So I think we also have our studio manager, Rich's guidance, who oversees everything over here in the studios, making sure everything's running nice and smooth. So thanks to everybody for great teamwork. Once again, for the big moment, Dr. Mike D'Auria. Dr. Mike was here with us in the last episode, and we had an interesting interview with him. We had some great explanations. We're going to pick up where we stopped. We're going to take off where we stopped yesterday. But before I do that, I need a little bit of feedback from Dr. Mike. If for those of you who need to get in touch with Dr. Mike, just get a look on your screen. His contact email, his telephone number is all up there. So if you have questions for him, send it directly to him or send it to us on the show, and we will talk about it the next time he comes back with us. Dr. Mike, what did you yesterday when we had this session together? What did you think we were doing right, or did we do something wrong? How were we going yesterday? What was the pace of our understanding? How did we go?
Everything looked really well.
Looked okay.
Yeah, the postures were all in alignment, and
So you made this great observation about yoga and chiropractic having a lot in common. So a lot of it is preventive, because I remember you and Sarah were talking about it before we started taping yesterday, and we're talking about chiropractic being more of a preventive
more of
method.
a wellness throughout your life, keeping your spine
Right.
in alignment, keeping the pressure off your nervous system so your body's functioning at 100%. And then
Right, optimal health.
Optimal health.
Wonderful.
And
So you're talking about body alignment. So because there are a lot of things that are going on in my mind, a lot of thoughts bombarding, and I don't know how to put it together, and I think you'd be the right person. So you're talking about making space in our spine, so with our stretching.
by keeping the discs filled with fluid through motion.
Okay.
Motion is what keeps everything.
Motion is what, and that helps
Working.
form the fluid. Does that work for the knees too? You know, the
Yep, every joint in the
synovial
body.
fluid? Every joint. That's good to know. Remember how we were talking about the
the kneecap.
synovial fluid
Yeah.
drying up as we grow older? So
Yeah, that's
motion
another
is what
thing
helps.
about chiropractic too, is we adjust every joint in the body, not just the spine, which a
Okay.
lot of people
Okay.
aren't aware
We
of.
don't
So it's the
realize that. That's
entire
true.
body.
Yeah,
true,
we just-
true.
It's good that you
Feet,
said that.
knees, shoulders,
Yeah.
everything. Any joint that moves, because if a joint's not moving, you're not going to get the proper motion. You're not going to get the fluid in and out. You're going to have pressure on the nerves. You're going to have altered function. One thing leads to another. It's a whole chain reaction.
So like.
So we want to look at the body as a whole.
Oh,
So
okay,
you
that's
just
kind of
hope-
holistic. Sorry.
That's interesting. I'm
Yeah,
just
that's
so,
where the
like,
term
shocked.
holistic comes from,
So
whole
now
body.
I'm going to be
whole.
asking you about my ankle because it is messed up. No, like I'm supposed to have some brace from like 2007, and in short, my ankle is still messed up to this day. Like if I wear a pair of heels after the day I wear them,
Right.
it just gets inflamed. Even this ankle is just naturally. I mean, it's not
I'm so
naturally
glad
swollen.
you brought that up, because I meant to ask him that, because I heard if people, not you particularly,
No.
but when people constantly wear heels, and correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding could be a little off or way off.
Oh, the
The
muscle.
plantar fasciis
that?
muscle they talk about at the bottom of the sole, on the sole of the foot, apparently when we wear heels a lot, that shortens. Is that correct? And then when we
Yeah.
suddenly go home, take the heels off, the pain occurs because that has got shortened through the day, and suddenly it has to stretch. So it's like a rubber band that's been in the freezer and suddenly comes out. You have to really stretch it out.
Yeah, it's going to increase the arch in your foot. And then when you
Okay.
take it off, it's going to come back down. You want to keep, there's a certain arch you should have in your foot. When all the foot bones are in alignment, it's proper. Plus, wearing heels are okay. It's more my opinion, but heels are okay to wear every now and then, dress
Right,
up, things
right.
like that. But if you're wearing them continually on a constant basis, it's also going to bring your feet up, which is going to increase the arch in your low back. That's one of the things.
Oh, there you
Well,
go.
that's why I
Sarah.
look
Yeah.
like I mean,
That's one of the reasons heels are invented, is it increases the arch in the low back, which brings a woman's chest out, which
Oh, right. Which makes them feel good, but it's really
Yeah.
not good for the posture, right?
for the low back, yeah.
For the low
oh,
back.
that's why
Too
part
much
why my
use.
back is always hurting me back.
There you go.
So-
You have your answers right there.
Somebody was
Oh,
like, you
that's
always
a
walking
beautiful
around like you're sticking your
explanation.
chest
Very
out.
nice.
She's been like, no, my back is messed up from all the heels. It's stuck like that.
No, so that
But
means
I never knew that
means
about-
Yeah.
you just wear
A lot of
heels
time-
less often.
A lot of times too, if a woman wears high heels a lot and she's wearing them into the office, I'll check the actual heel length itself, because you'll notice one side might be a little shorter than the other from wear and tear
on the
Oh,
by
okay.
the pelvis being misaligned. So
Right, right. Oh my God.
myself and a lot of other chiropractors, we always look at people's shoes to see
With-
maybe, how they're walking, where the
Right.
wear and tear on the shoe itself is, because that can give us an idea of how they're walking, alignment,
pinpoint
things.
the problem from the.
I wouldn't.
She wants a
no,
whole
I wouldn't
session,
go.
right?
I'm
Yeah.
just so curious. No, I'm
I wouldn't
not.
go as far to pinpoint the problem, because you want to take more into account. It's more like a clue in solving the puzzle of giving the patient ultimately the best adjustment you can possibly give them, which is when you're finding the joint that's misaligned for whatever reason, and doing the chiropractic adjustment, the light, safe thrust to get the joint moving properly in the right direction, ultimately to relieve the pressure off the nerves and let the body heal itself.
That's a fascinating explanation, because once we understand what our problem really, where it occurs, I think it's easier to correct it, right? Once
Yeah.
you know.
Like we
if
look
it's-
at a lot of things with people. You look at with posture. We'll look at just for their head, for example. I could go through the whole body, but just the head itself.
Right.
We'll look at how it's tilted, if it's
Right.
rotated,
Yeah.
shifted forward, back, because that could give us an idea. Their head tilt might be compensating for something else or
Right.
things like that. I mean,
That brings to
Because your
mind.
body naturally tries to fix whatever's
Exactly.
wrong with it.
Right, it
Yeah.
corrects itself.
I can see that.
Autocorrect. The
So-
body is on autocorrect.
Yep.
That brings to
three-level
mind.
system, like the lower, the middle, and the upper.
Right.
Same with, like you were mentioning scoliosis before too.
Right.
Like if there's one type of scoliosis, and it's moving to one side, the opposite side is going to have to compensate for that curve on the other side.
Right,
So
right.
you want to look.
Bring it all together so it
Balances
aligns
it
well.
out.
In fact, that's a fascinating point you just
You must
covered,
have a
because
headache
it
every
brings.
night. That is so much.
We talk in yoga. We talk about when we close our eyes.
A lot of
we
headaches
say-
come from the upper neck, joint misalignment. Yeah.
In
So
yoga,
maybe you
remember
don't
how
have
in
a
one
lot
of
of
the
headaches.
previous episodes
Okay.
we talked about, I actually, in the last episode too, you talk about closing your eyes and see if your body moves to the left or to the right. And I noticed, and I pointed this out in one of
Yeah.
our earlier episodes, that if we look at our footwear, for example, the impress on one foot, the shoe may have worn off a lot more than on the other. And that's obviously because we're putting more pressure on
Something
that
else
side.
you brought up too is a very interesting point too. It's a more of a advanced concept that I and some other people use in chiropractic, but
Right.
there's two types of it's called proprioception. That's how your body is in space.
Right.
And we call it conscious and unconscious. Like conscious right now is like I know that I'm leaning towards you, so I'm going
Right.
to balance myself to lean.
Right.
And I'm using my eyes to do that. But when you close your eyes, that's unconscious proprioception.
Right.
And that comes from fluid in the ears and brain chemistry and other
Right.
things. But what we'll do is we'll have a patient close their eyes, maybe nod their head up and down a little bit, march in place just to do things to throw them off, and then we'll get their natural posture. Because a lot of times you're compensating consciously for something that's
When your
wrong
eyes-
going on.
Or is that why I slash or am I just lazy?
Huh.
I'm like, you talk about posture, then I'll be like,
Well,
let me
we're
go.
going to save some of Dr. Mike's tips for the next episode. So here's what we're going to do. We want to pick up from where we stopped yesterday. We were talking about some of the simple breathing techniques. Dr. Mike, you pointed out something about keeping one hand on the chest and the other hand on the belly, and that's exactly what we do in yoga, except we don't know how to explain it the way you did. So we're going to use your technique today. Place your right hand on your lower belly, left hand on the chest. Take your shoulders back and close your eyes. When we close our eyes, we introvert and we're actually channeling. We like to say in yoga, where the mind goes, energy flows. So we're going to channel that energy through the body. We're going to teach you how to take what we call a full yogic breath. To the count of 4, take a deep inhale through the belly, hold to the count of 2, exhale to the count of 8. So let's first try that only the belly. The chest stays where it is. Inhale, 1, hold, exhale through the belly. One more time. Inhale through the belly to the count of 4. Exhale. That's half a yogic breath. Keep your hands where they are. This time, we're going to take you through what we call the full yogic breath. We're going to inhale to the count of 4 through the belly. Let's do inhale to the count of 3 through the belly. Inhale through the lungs to the count of 3 and then hold it. Lock all that fresh air inside your system to the count of 2. So it's 3 through the belly, 3 through the chest, 2 to hold, exhale, 8. So let's try that. Inhale through the belly and on to the lungs. Hold, exhale to 8. Before we do the second round of the second step, you will notice, and the second time we'll point it out, so notice which part of your body exhales first. It's usually the part that inhales first, that goes down first. So it should be exhale first through the belly and then the chest starts collapsing. Let's try that. Inhale through the belly, through the lungs, hold it, exhale to 8. Belly first, and then the lungs, till you get all the air out of your system. Now, I would like to turn around to Dr. Mike. I want to ask you, does that go along with what you are training your patients to do?
Yeah,
Is that
all the
part of the
time. That's
breathing?
one of the few things I look for on almost every patient.
Help me understand. What are we doing in there? We say it in yogic terms.
Well,
but
a
I
lot of
want to-
people in our country, especially nowadays, are very stressed out. They're always
Right.
on the run, and that makes you more of a chest breather. So people
Right.
breathe more from the chest.
You mentioned that, yes, in
Yeah.
the last episode, right?
And when that happens, you're using your backup muscles, which are all in the neck area here. There's a bunch of groups. I won't get into the names of them, but
Right.
they become
I don't think we
excessively tight.
Right.
And especially there's a couple muscles in here in the back of the neck that connect to the base of your skull. And if those muscles are getting excessively tighter too, you're going to
Right.
get a lot of headaches, especially they call them tension headaches in there.
Yeah.
So
oh my God.
a
that
lot of
is-
times, especially if people have a lot of tension headaches on both sides, I'll just kind of rewire their programming
Right.
with the breathing and just
So
show
when you
them
have
that.
a headache, the abdominal breathing is good, or the chest breathing?
Oh, and yeah,
whole thing.
in general it's good, but
Right.
I'm just showing you an example of how
Yeah,
it could
please.
lead to a symptom.
Okay.
And then that combined with the adjustment to relieve the pressure, usually you see their headaches fade away instantly,
Wow.
unless it's caused by something further, but I see
This
it
is-
all the time.
These are precious tips.
Mm.
Dr. Mike, here's what we're going to do. We are going to do some of the chiropractic techniques, some of the stretches that you do with your patients, the physiotherapy that you do with your patients.
Yeah, a lot
You're
of
gonna
times
use
I'll
that.
take yoga poses I've learned through the
Right.
years, and
we
I'll
wanna
use the
do
same
that.
pose, or I'll modify it or combine it with other
Fantastic.
poses or martial art movements to help rehabilitate a patient, and it
Right.
works wonders.
So we talked about 5 or 6 poses. So 5 or 6 postures in yoga. What I'll do is I'll talk us through the postures, and Sarah and I will hold it, and you feel free to hold it as well. But after that, you can take us through the adaptations for that particular posture. So we're taking each posture a little further than we normally would. So let's do that. Let's all come on all fours. So Josiane, we're not going to stand up today. Hands directly below the shoulders, knees directly below the hips, toes are curled in, fingers are nicely splayed. Now remember always, or whenever you can remember anyway, use your abdominal region for breathing. Inhale and exhale, all conscious breathing. Try to use your lower abdomen. I'm going to take you through what's called Marjarya or cat posture. And I'll explain very briefly before we get into it. We're going to inhale, lift the chin, chest, and buttocks up and dip the torso. But as we do that, keep the lower abdominal region nice and firm when you dip. And then we exhale, uncurl the toes, arch the back. So keep your toes curled in first. Inhale and dip. Bend your elbows. So lift your chin up, chest is open, buttocks are up. Now uncurl your toes, arch your back. We'll do that twice. One more time. Curl your toes in, inhale, dip. Uncurl your toes, arch your back. Let's first come into neutral position, Dr. Mike. I noticed that there's a wonderful undulating motion of the spine. How's that helping us?
A lot of people's spine gets very stiff from lack of motion, so this is
Right.
one very basic maneuver that they could do just to get basic spinal mobility, moving back and forth, but it's also going to help with the curve in your low back, also known as lumbar region.
Right.
That's the
right,
low back.
Okay.
Naturally should curve down and in towards the belly button like a C.
Oh, okay.
So the more mobility you have, bringing it back down
Oh,
as
right.
you
So when you
exhale
do this,
and
right.
up, it's going to help to stretch the ligaments, stretch the discs
Wonderful.
and muscles, especially if someone has a more straighter low back curve.
Right. Right.
So-
take us through the adaptations that you use with your patients in this posture.
Yeah, a lot of times once I'll work on someone's low back, usually a lot of people have weak core section
Right.
in here,
I
and they're
do.
going to have, if you have a weaker core section, a lot of times they're going to have a really tight low back. So I'll start them off with the maneuver we're doing right now, the
Okay.
cat, where you're coming down and up to help them with motion. But then one thing I try to do is train them on how to use their transverse muscle.
Right.
That's pretty much the core muscle in the
Okay.
abdomen. And by doing that, you're bringing the belly button to the spine and
Right.
holding it.
So you talked about raising one hand and the opposite leg. So
Mm-hmm.
why don't you take us
Yep.
through that one?
Once they're able to hold the stomach good, like that,
Right.
belly button to the spine, and they're able to hold it while they're breathing like I am now. I'm holding it as we speak.
Right. Oh.
Without rocking back and forth, I'll have them start by bringing one limb up, either an arm or a leg.
Okay.
And they're just going to hold it up there. And then we'll bring it back down. And everyone goes at their own pace. And
Right.
you want to bear in mind, too, I give this to patients that are coming off of long-term low back pain or that are injured. So
Right.
although it might seem fairly easy sometimes for us right now, like this
For
is
them,
for
they're in
more,
pain.
for them, this is more of rehab, and it's a lot harder for them.
Got it.
But then it could always go a step further,
Yeah.
every motion. So usually, just to speed it up, I'll start with one arm, then I'll have them do the opposite leg,
Opposite leg, okay.
without rocking back and forth because
Right.
their transverse muscle is holding all the strength. And then usually the last step is I'll have them bring it down and up without rocking.
Leg two?
Yep, leg two.
Okay.
And
This is like an exercise.
It is good.
and then they could do their sets, and then they'll switch sides
Okay. So left arm up. Very
Yep.
nice. And then
while
raise
contracting
your right
the
leg.
while contracting the transverse the whole time,
Okay.
because the whole goal of this is core stabilization.
Right. Okay. And,
And
we're
if you-
doing the opposite limbs for balance, obviously.
Oh yeah, this will work the balance too.
Right.
But also notice too, I'm keeping my head up to maintain the curve of my neck.
Oh, interesting.
A
Yeah.
lot of people let their head dip down, or you want the head up.
Right.
And not only up, you want to pretend there's a string on the head pulling it up and out to keep the elongation in the spine.
Okay.
Always want to keep everything elongated to keep.
Right. Keep the length
Yep.
and the space in the body. Go ahead, Sarah.
So,
And-
like, I understand with the clients, they're in a
Let's come up.
sensitive
We're
place.
doing the next one.
So they have to make sure those core muscles are tightened.
Mm-hmm.
But for like regular people, me and you, healthy people.
Oh yeah, I can always
we
find a
don't-
way to make it harder, like for regular people.
No,
Sarah,
no,
don't get me in trouble.
Well, no. What I'm trying to ask is, if your muscles are not, if you don't control those well, and you're trying to do certain exercise, can you hurt your back?
We might.
It could make you more prone to injury. Like
Right.
Oh, so it is very
Core-
important to
yeah.
be
To
able
use
to
the
use
core
them
belt.
even.
it's an
though-
interesting fact that I've read that they did a study. Every single motion we do, the core muscle contracts first.
Okay.
And core muscles are not your outer abdomen and lower back like people think. You want to think of like an apple. The core of an apple is way deep
Center.
inside, the center. Like these are your abdominal muscles, these are your low back
There's
muscles.
a muscle behind.
Then you have your side, your obliques. Those are that's your outer core. It's the inner core that a lot of people don't focus on, and that's one of the more important things, even just as a human
another
being.
muscle behind the ab?
Way
So
way
there
deep
is a muscle
down.
in there. Oh,
Wow.
There's
Well, let's get into a camel and maybe you can show, because we have these 5 postures that you use with your patients. So why don't we have Dr. Mike take us through those muscle groups as we do the other 4 as well. I don't want to miss out on what you share with your patients. So let's do the camel. Let's come up on our knees. So you're talking about the core, which is behind. The lower abdominal
internal.
region?
Same as
Internal?
same as an apple, like way deep down.
How do we control that?
how do I feel that?
Takes a little practice at first. The easiest way is you take your belly button
Yeah.
and as you exhale out, you bring it in. And if you do it correctly, you should see one line going around
Huh.
your stomach.
Oh,
It's
I
not-
see. Yeah, I do.
Yeah,
Hold
you
on.
could feel it. If you put kind of like your fingers around your belly
Yeah,
button
it's here. You don't
as
have
you
enough
exhale
padding,
out,
girl. You need to go.
I'm like,
like you'll feel a little divot in here.
right,
It's
yeah.
not if you're working your abdomen, which you still should, it's very important. That's your outer core.
That's a great
That's
tip.
more of a
Great tip.
flex forward, flexing motion
Right.
coming
Oh,
forward. And The low back would be more of an extension motion.
In fact, that's what we're going to do next. Well, let's do the camel. Let's turn to face the front right of the camera. Sorry, Sarah. Front right of the mat. We're going to face this camera so Josiane can get us in profile. As we enter the posture, Dr. Mike, you just feel free to explain what we're doing because it relates very well to the last point you made. Place both your palms, keep the tops of your feet flat on the mat. If you curl your toes in, just remember that there's more pressure on your knees. So you want to keep the tops flat, both palms on your buttocks. We have about 3 or 4 minutes, so we should be able to take our viewers through about 3 more postures. We want to do your sequence right here. Inhale, lift your chin up, open up your chest, glide your hands down the back of your thighs. Right hand goes to the right heel, left hand to the left. Tilt your head back once you've made the connection and tilt your pelvis forward. Feel free, help us understand, Dr. Aurea, Dr. Mike, what are we doing here?
What you're doing right here is you're letting your head come back,
Right.
which is going to help with your neck curve.
Okay.
And the gravity is what's going to be doing that. It's pulling down, and it's going to help restore your neck curve.
Right.
And in addition to that, it's doing the same thing on your low back curve right here as well.
So if I hear a pop in my low back, is that bad? Is that air pockets?
Yeah, a lot of times that's just fluid and air shifting
Okay.
inside every joint. There's some fluid, air, and nitrogen gas. That's what you hear, the popping sound. Like if I was going to crack my knuckle.
Right,
Or
yeah,
things-
we do
something like that.
Inhale, bring your hands back up because otherwise Sarah's going to call me names. So please go ahead.
Yep, a lot of times, a lot of patients need their neck curve restored because a lot of us have what's called forward head shift where the neck comes forward.
Yeah,
because
is that because we use pillows? I've always been curious because I don't like pillows just because of that.
the gravity brings us down naturally in a lot of compression we do,
Okay.
but it's mostly from a lot of things we do. We're hunched over on the cell phone when we bring it down,
Right,
our
right,
head's
right.
coming forward.
That's true.
And
True, no, that's
most
wonderful.
people have, a lot of people have desk jobs. We're sitting a lot,
Yeah.
which is naturally going to bring our head slightly
Josiane, this
forward.
one is for you. Dr. Mike has specifically assigned this posture for you, the camel. Josiane's always on the computer. Extend your left leg all the way to the back. Credits are rolling, which means we have about 1.5 minutes, maybe 2 minutes. So we're going to go from one into the other. This is a pigeon posture, and we take our legs all the way back. And if your hips are not aligned, you can be sure Dr. Mike is going to come and straighten you out. So let's make sure your hips are nicely centered. Any explanation for this very briefly?
Yep, this helps with pelvic motion, stretching the pelvic muscles.
Okay.
And same thing for the low back. When you're in this position, you want to, same as always, elongate, string pulling the head up.
I like that.
As you come up, then you
Image.
exhale out and you're coming back and pushing down at the same time.
Very nice.
So it's going to help with the pelvic motion, help with the low back, and the entire spine.
Fabulous. Let's switch legs. Bring the left leg forward and swing the right leg all the way back. Glide your right leg all the way to the back. Sometimes one side feels more flexible than the other, cooperates a lot more. Is that normal? Hopefully.
Yeah. So, and a lot of times it's from pelvic misalignment too.
Ah,
So
okay.
if a lot of your pelvis can go in different directions, and if one side is shifted forward or back, when you do this pose, you'll
Right.
be able to tell which one. Sometimes I use this as a test to look at people's pelvis to see.
To see if they're
The alignment.
well aligned. Very gracefully take your left leg all the way to your back, to the back, and then come down in prone position. Palms directly